Well, good morning. It's good to see you all. I want to invite you with me to open a Bible to John chapter 1. John chapter 1, verse 35 is where we're beginning today. As we, if you were with us at Christmas time, we began a journey in John's gospel. And where we're picking up today is where we left off in verse 35. And we're gonna walk through John's gospel between now and honestly the end of July, Lord willing, is the plan. And I'm really excited about this. We're just gonna kind of camp out here in his gospel. And what we're gonna do is see John just sort of take us by the hand, as it were, and show us how amazing and satisfying Jesus is in our lives. How amazing and satisfying Jesus is. Because he's continually, what you're going to see is he's continually just putting Jesus forward in front of us. And as he does that, he's kind of revealing and showing us that Jesus really is our hope. He's the hope of every single heart, every single person in this world. And that's contrary to how you and I often think about hope, because often when we think about hope, we say and we use the word hope in a way that means like I wishfully think sort of things, right? I hope, I wish that tomorrow the weather's going to be nice, which in California is usually nails that one, right? But maybe it's like I wish the egg prices, would go down, or the gas prices or something, or just I hope things go well tomorrow, It's kind of how we use the word. But that's not how the Bible uses the word hope. And the reason is because our hope is not tied up into our circumstances changing. When the Bible gives us the presentation of what you're hoping for, we find out that our hope is found in the person of Jesus Christ. The way we're saying it through this series of the Gospel of John is that hope has a name. That hope has a name, and his name is Jesus. And so I don't know where you're at this morning. I definitely don't know all of you, that's for sure. So I don't know where you're coming into this room from, what you're going through in your life, but I do know that you need hope. I know that you need hope. And the reason I know that is because I know I need hope. Sure, we need oxygen in this world. We need water. We need, our bodies and health and all these various things. But I'm serious. I'm telling you, you need hope more than you need any of those things. Because if you run out of hope, if you cease to have hope, you begin to realize, I can't keep moving forward in this world. When we lose hope, everything else sort of begins to fall apart. And so everybody in this room needs hope. That person across the street from you, or that family member, or that coworker, every single person in this world needs hope. The world is dying for hope. And so the question isn't, hey, are you looking for hope this morning? I assume you are, whether you're thinking about it or not. The question is, what are you seeking? What are you seeking to find hope in? And that's where our passage begins today. We're just going to read this incredible story of Jesus calling his first disciples as we go, beginning in verse 35. I'm going to read down through verse 39. This is what it says. The next day, so this is the day after John the Baptist baptized Jesus at the Jordan River. And it said an angel, or the dove ascended on him as the Holy Spirit, and the Father said, "This is my Son with whom I'm well pleased." That happened the day before, is what John is saying. Now it's the next day. And again, John the Baptist, not John the gospel writer, John the Baptist was standing with two of his disciples. And he looked at Jesus as he walked by and said, "Behold the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard him say this, and they followed Jesus. Jesus turned and saw them following and said to them, "What are you seeking?" And they said to him, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying?" And he said to them, "Come and you will see." So they came and saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. I just want you to pay attention to this as we go through this passage this morning. You're going to see a lot of language around seeing. Come and see. Look at this sort of idea. You're going to see it throughout. And it starts right out of the gate here. And what John is showing us is this incredible question, this provocative question from Jesus. And it's the first question that he would ask us this morning around our hope, and that is simply, what are you seeking? What are you seeking? See, John is standing with his followers, and in his humility, he points to Jesus as Jesus is walking by, and he says, "Behold the Lamb of God." In other words, pay attention to him. Look at him. Recognize who he is. This humble statement from John is pointing us in the same way to the same relevance for our life. He would be saying to us this morning, are you burdened down? Are you weighed down by your sin? Do you have sin in your life? Is it convicting you? Is it bothering you? Look to Jesus. Look at him. He is the Lamb that God sent to pay the price for our sin debt so that we could be made right with God. If you're weighed down this morning, the way you deal with that is not by looking inside of yourself and trying to beat yourself up, trying to clean yourself up. The message is still the same. Look at Jesus. Look at him. Behold him. Pay attention to him. And that's exactly what John does. And then what does it say? The two disciples who were with John the Baptist, they followed Jesus. They left him and they followed Jesus. One we learn in verse 40 is named Andrew, who's Simon Peter's brother. The other one is the unnamed mystery man disciple, okay, which most people actually think it's John who's writing this gospel because he would have all this information, all this detail. But we don't know exactly who this other person is, but we know that he left John the Baptist and he began to follow Jesus, and Jesus turns to them and he asks them this similar question. What are you seeking? It's an interesting question. What I want you to know is these are the very first words recorded as being said by Jesus in this gospel account. Jesus has not spoken up to this point, and so John has chosen these words to be the first words that he records that Jesus says in this account, which goes in line with his whole goal, right? At the end of the Gospel of John, he says, I've recorded all these things, these stories, these teachings of Jesus, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you may have life in his name. And so here, John begins the gospel by showing us Jesus looking at people who are beginning to follow him, and he's asking them, what are you seeking? What are you after? And this question is actually going to come up over and over and over again throughout this book. What do I have that you want? Is what he's saying. What about you? What about you this morning? What is it you are really looking for in life? And what does Jesus have to do with that? What does Jesus have to do with that? I mean, you made a decision to be here this morning. Right? No one forced you to be here, you know? And so, what are you doing here, you know? I want you here. Like, hope you hear me say that. I want you. I'm not asking you to, like, leave or something. Like, what are you doing here? Right? But really, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Why are you here this morning? Jesus is asking you, why do you seek me? Why do you seek me? What are you after? Are you after something from Jesus? Or are you after Jesus? Are you after Jesus? I think if we're honest, myself included, we are so easily tempted to use Jesus as a means to another end. That he plays this sort of utility function in our life. I really hope for something. I want something else, and Jesus is a means by which I can maybe get that thing. All right, well, we do this all the time, starting at a very young age. When our kids were much younger, we lived in a cul-de-sac in Oregon, and there was all these kids that lived in our cul-de-sac, and so every day, night and day, we had kids over at our house. It sounds great, and it really was great, but some days it was like, could you just, leave us alone for a while, But nonetheless, we always had kids over at our house and that sort of thing, and so our kids always wanted to play with the neighbors, and our son Tucker, he had this neighbor kid named Owen, and he loved Owen. And when your kids are young, many of you maybe know this, or you remember being a kid, he didn't want to go play over at Owen's house because he's like, I just love being in the presence of Owen. Right? He's just such a good guy, I just want to be with him. He's like, no, I love Owen's trampoline. I really just want to play on Owen's trampoline, right? I mean, this is how kids function. It's like, oh man, we're friends, you got this thing, right? And so I want to hang out with you because you got this thing. And they're kind of unapologetic about it, and it's just innocent, it's just sweet. It's just the way it is, you know what I mean? Right, we still do that in different ways. I remember when I was a youth pastor, and I wanted to try to give my best, biggest pitch to guys in the youth group about why they should go to camp or this certain event or something like that. I would give my pitch, and then inevitably I would prepare for the question that each one of them would always ask me. Are there going to be girls there? And I was like, yeah, there'll be girls there. And like, all right, I'm in. You know what I mean? Like, I'm there. This youth camp or event was just a means to the end of like meeting Rachel or whoever it was. This kind of idea. Right? Well, we do this all the time. I still do it. Right? And we do this with Jesus, and that's what's kind of scary, actually. He can easily become a tool, a utility in our life. Jesus, I will follow you. I will seek you because I really want my family to be physically healthy. Right? And so I have the superstition almost that if I follow you and I'm obeying you or whatever, then my family's going to be fine. Or if our family is not going through good health, I'm going to start seeking God because maybe then he'll heal. Right? Or I'm going through a really difficult emotional time. Right? I'm just thrown into the depression, or I'm just really struggling with anxiety or this grief in my life or something, and so I just really need help, and so I'm gonna follow Jesus, right? He can help me with that, right? Or maybe I'm just isolated. I really need some friends. I need a community, and so these people follow Jesus. They're good people, and so I'm gonna follow Jesus so that I can have this sort of friendship and this community in my life. We can even do this with ministry. Right? I'm going to follow Jesus, and if I follow Jesus, then maybe that means he's going to bless my ministry. He's going to bless this area of my life. And all of us, these are all really good things. These are really important things in life. And whether we recognize it or not, though, each one of us, we are on a quest to obtain what we think is going to make us happy. And for many of us, Jesus is just like a part of that equation. Right? What is that thing for you? What is that thing for you? What are you really seeking? What are you searching for? Like in those quiet moments when you're alone with your own thoughts, you're not distracting yourself, what are you after? Right? What are you yearning for? I think sometimes just think about what it is that you obsess over. I don't mean that in like a OCD kind of way or something, but just like what does your mind like default to? You just kind of keep thinking about it. You know what I mean? In those moments. Is it work? Oh, I keep thinking about my work, Is it just finding someone in your life or a certain person in your life to kind of give you the attention maybe you're looking for? Maybe it's his boyfriend or girlfriend or something like that, or maybe in those moments you're just numbing yourself. You go back to the bottle. You take more pills. You watch another episode. You serve up another plate. You do some more searching on the web. What is it that makes you jealous? What is it that makes you angry? What is it that makes you sad? What are you really searching for? And what does Jesus have to do with that? This is the question from the lips of Jesus right out of the gate in this book, and it's going to come up again and again. As you follow him, what are you after? Look at their response. Where are you staying? What do they mean? Jesus, we would love some time with you. Right? We just want a private place where we can talk. And I love this. Look at verse 39. Look at the warmth of Jesus. What does he say? Oh, come and see. Come and see. He invites us into his life. I love this about Jesus, you guys. He is so kind. Throughout the gospel, Jesus receives people with all kinds of mixed motivations. And that teaches us something, that you might be coming in today with some mixed motivation. He might be a utility in your life or some means to another end, but he's okay with just starting where you're at. Right? You just need to be prepared for him to transform your desires. And so maybe you're here this morning and you're here because you think Jesus can help you with some need in your life. You're in like a marriage crisis, or you're really frustrated in your parenting, or you're struggling with some form of loneliness, or a financial crisis, or a health crisis, or maybe you're just scared that you don't know what's going to happen to you after you die, or you're troubled about the future. And yes, Jesus can help you with all of those things, but the question that he has for you is bigger, and it's better. So they came and they saw where he was staying, And they stayed with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour, which would have been 4 p.m., which tells us that they would have stayed throughout the night. So this is like the end of day one. It's the end of the scene. And so what are they seeking is Jesus' question. What is going to be their response? Well, I think they found what they're looking for. What does it say in verse 40? One of the two who heard John speak and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which means Christ. He brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas," which means Peter. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him, of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Come and see. The second thing we're going to ask here is, what happens? What happens when you found what you're actually looking for? Like if you're hoping in something, what happens when you found what you're actually looking for? Well, look at these repeated statements in these parallel accounts with Andrew and Simon, and then with Philip and Nathanael. What do they say? They both say two similar things. We have found him. We have found the Messiah. We have found the one that this world has been waiting for. We found him. And then what do they say? Come and see. I found him. Hey, you, come and see. Come and see. So Simon does this, or Andrew does this to Simon, and what does it say in verse 42? He brought him to Jesus. He brings him to Jesus. He introduces him to Jesus. This is like the core, this is like the simplicity of evangelism. You're not arguing with someone, you're just introducing them to Jesus. And this is what he does. He just introduces him to Jesus. There's not debate going on here. It's just simple. I found him. Hey, come and see him for yourself. I mean, what happens when we meet Jesus face to face in faith? Even you, what happens? Well, when Jesus meets Simon, there's something really interesting that goes on here. And you have to keep in mind that what's happening here with Simon is unique in church history, because Simon is going to be one of the foremost apostles who's going to stand up on the day of Pentecost, and he's going to preach the gospel, and thousands of people are going to get saved. Through his teaching, they're going to see the church built upon his testimony and his witness, just like the other apostles. So in some sense, I'm not Peter. Like, I'm not an apostle. You're not Peter. You're not an apostle. Sorry if that offends you, right? But nonetheless, what is happening here is important in Peter's story of becoming that apostle, Cephas the rock. But nonetheless, there's something happening here that happens to every Christian when we come face to face in faith with Jesus. What does Jesus do with him? He renames him. He renames him. Just think about how crazy that is. Like, think about this. Like, his parents named him Simon. And Jesus, the moment he is introduced to him, just says, "Oh, Simon? No, that's not your name." And he's, "Oh, yeah, it is." Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what's going on here. I wish I have more of the scene in front of me, but I mean, you're probably like, who is this guy? Just giving me a new name? Like, don't miss how interesting this is, right? It's not boring. It's very interesting. I mean, if someone has a name or if something has a name, you don't just get to change what that name is, right? Like, you don't have the authority to do that. That's why we don't question, like, this is a shirt. I don't just say, no, this is like a belt now, or, whatever. Like, we don't call something different. Like, I don't have the authority to do that, right? And we definitely do this with names. I mean, imagine something happens today, like you go see my daughter Eden, and after the service, you go see Eden, and imagine going up to her and just saying, "Hi, Eden, daughter of Josh and Elizabeth, I've been thinking, and your name will now be Trish." She'd be like, "No thanks." right? Like, who are you? That's kind of odd that you're doing that. This is kind of a weird thing, right? I even this week, I asked my kids at the dinner table because I thought it'd be a fun conversation. Like, if you could rename yourself, like, what would you name yourself? And Eden said Sophia, so if you do want to rename her, she's open to that one. I think Tucker said Hunter. Isla said Gia or something. I don't even know what name that is. And then I think Gus said I want to just be Gus. And I was like, that's a great Gus answer. But nonetheless, right, it's a fun question to ask. And we all understand, like, I can't do that. We all have this sense that even I don't feel like I can do that. So interesting stuff is going on here. What is happening? Well, look at his first name. What does he say? Simon, that's your current name. Son of John, that's your family name. Your whole past, all that you've been, your heritage, your family tree. But you're going to be called Cephas, which means rock. It's a picture of what God is going to do through his life. Right? Again, this is the introduction to Jesus. But there's an important lesson here for us, and that is when you come to Jesus and when you find him as the one you've been looking for, the one that you've been hoping for, you, like Peter, cease to be defined by your past. Right? You're not just who your parents are. You're not your family tree. Right? You cease to be defined by your past sins. You cease to be defined by your present failures, your present mistakes, your present sins, or even your present accomplishments. Those don't define you anymore. Jesus defines you. Amen. He gives you a new name. And so just like Peter, you begin to be defined by who Jesus is making you into and the plans that he has for you. He knows who you are. He knows who you were. And most importantly, he knows who you are going to be becoming as you follow him. You are now a witness to his greatness. And this pattern continues, right? Jesus goes to Philip in the next scene, and Jesus finds Philip, and he says, "Follow me." Picks him out of the crowd. And Philip goes to Nathanael, and what does he say? Same thing Andrew said. We have found the Messiah. We have found the one that Moses and the prophets were talking about. And Nathanael is a skeptic. What does he say? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? It's a sincere question. We know this because Jesus is going to say to him in the next scene, "Behold," when Jesus approaches him, "an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." He's not mocking him. He's not being sarcastic. He's saying, "You're genuine. You're the real deal, Nathanael." So it's a genuine question here. This skeptic, Nathanael, it's not smokescreen sort of stuff. He's not just like, I don't want to talk about God right now. Oh, can anything good come out? Like look over here instead. People you talk to do that kind of stuff. He's like sincerely questioning here. Can anything good come out of there? And what does Philip say? Come and see. The disciples are learning right away what you and I must learn. And that is that the best witness is simply to enjoy Jesus ourselves. And as we enjoy Jesus, as we find the one we've been waiting for, our lives now consist of just turning to the person next to us and saying, "Hey, you too, come and see." I'm just introducing a person to the person that we've all been waiting for. That's all this is. I'm following Jesus. I'm a disciple of Jesus, meaning I'm listening to his teaching. I'm learning from him. But as I learn from him, I'm living it out in obedience because I love him and I want his ways in my life. I'm following Jesus. But as I follow Jesus, I say, "Hey, come along with me. Come along with me." It's quite simple. This is how faith works, you guys. This is how following Jesus works. I have to think about this. Did you know that in the mid to earlier 1900s, it was reported that in China, there were about 700,000 Christians, which sounds like a lot until you see how many people live in China. And that's like nothing. But then after they closed their borders and Christians weren't allowed in there, we for decades were just wondering, what is God doing? What's happening behind the scenes? And as their borders were reopened to other people to go in and see what had become of the place, it is reported now that there are about 100 million Christians in China. 700,000 to 100 million. How does that happen? How does that happen? Well, it doesn't happen because people in China are like, you know what? Like, let's come up with a really cool name for a church, and we'll have this great branding, and oh man, we got the best kids ministry, and whatever it is. Like, it's not done that way. That's not how the church has grown in China or any time in the history of the world. That's not how our church would even grow, God forbid. How this happens is simply because somebody has found Jesus to be their hope. And as they find Jesus as their hope, they just tell other people, hey, you got to check out how great he is. Just come and see for yourself. And as that natural process happens in life, 700,000 to 100 million. This is how it works. He doesn't need our help in converting other people. I can't change your heart. I'm so aware of that. I can't even change my own heart. Right? And so all we're called to do is just tell our story like Philip and Andrew did. And then when a person asks a skeptical question, we just go, come and see for yourself. Hey, come to a service with me. Right? I mean, we're on Transition Sunday. We got more room in this room right now. And that's a great thing. And the reason is because you and I can now go, hey, just come with me. Right? Come and see. You could say, hey, come, let's just want to come read the Bible with me? I'll walk with you through that. I'm not going to sit here and just try to like cram it all down your throat and convince you, but let's explore who Jesus is together. Let's read the Bible together. Right? Jesus does the converting. I just do the inviting. I just do the inviting. So do you see what's going on in this chapter? If you remember back at Christmas, John the Baptist is the witness. He's the witness to who Jesus is. And now he's passing the baton of witness to these early followers who Jesus is going to confirm are his legitimate followers. And so now they're saying to us in the 21st century, we have found the Messiah, Pathway Church. Come and see him. So here's the thing, guys. When you come and see for yourself that Jesus is the one that you've been looking for, you will go and tell. That is what happens when you find the thing you've been looking for. That's what happens. It's natural. It's natural. The command in our passage is come and see. You are never told in this passage to go and tell. It's just happening. It's just happening. It's just happening. I love this about Jesus, that when you truly encounter him for who he really is, when you find him as your hope, your heart will begin to expand for other people. It will. Because as more and more people come to faith in Jesus, he doesn't diminish in what he gives out. There's more of him. And as the people that you love, the people that you don't even know, that you're growing to love, partake in enjoying Jesus, that just increases your joy. It will. It'll increase your joy. But lastly, climactically, in this passage, we see this incredible question that I want to ask you this morning, especially if you're here and you know Jesus. Let's just be honest, maybe you're a little bored with him. What we see here in this passage is not only what happens when you found what you've been looking for, but what if today is just the beginning? What if there's more? What if there's more? Look in verse 47. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, and he said, behold, an Israelite, indeed, in whom there is no deceit. Nathanael said to him, how do you know me? And Jesus answered him, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael answered him, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. And Jesus answered him, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these. And he said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. I want you to know something really important. Verse 51 is the key verse. It's the key verse. This is one of the key verses in all the gospel, and it brings John's entire introduction. So all of chapter 1 is actually an introduction to the gospel. It brings it to a thundering conclusion. Because Jesus turns to Nathanael and he says, truly, truly, I say to you. And it's hard to see it in our English, but that you is plural. It's plural, not just Nathanael. You, plural, will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. He might have easily just said then, Nathanael, you, and Andrew, you, and Simon, you, right? Philip, you, mystery fifth disciple, you, like in this seat, you, plural, including you guys who have found me, but in fact I have found you. Now I have found you and I've called you to follow me, and now I'm going to show you heaven open up. He says the Son of Man is who he refers to himself as, which is his favorite title to refer to himself. And that's a reference to Daniel chapter 7. And this is fascinating because Jesus has been given some pretty amazing titles throughout the introduction already. He's been called the Son of Man. He's been called the Son of God. He's been called the Christ. He's called the Messiah. He's called the Word made flesh. He's called the Creator of everything. He's called the Light of the world. He's called the Lamb of God. And here in John's conclusion, thundering conclusion, he states Jesus is the Son of Man. He is the great heavenly King. And if you and I are going to get under the skin of what verse 51 is actually talking about, we have to return in our Bibles to the book of Genesis chapter 28, because he's referring to something really significant that happens there. This comes after a long process of God revealing himself. In Genesis chapter 28, Jesus says that chapter is about me. Because what does it say there? It should be on the screen for you, but what you have is a man named Jacob, and his brother Esau's trying to kill him. Jacob's dad is dead. He's all alone in the middle of nowhere, and he lays his head down on a rock in the middle of nowhere again, and he has a dream. And Jacob dreams in his loneliness, and he says, behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it, and behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and the east and the north and the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I've promised. I don't have to explain to you guys what a ladder is, right? A ladder, as we all know, it makes something that's inaccessible accessible, right? I can't get up there, but if I had a ladder, I could do it, right? I mean, this room terrifies me when I look up at the top how tall this is, right? If I had a ladder, I could maybe get up there. Wouldn't want to get up there, but I could get up there. I ain't getting up there without a ladder, right? The same way, if you were up there and you wanted to get down, you would need a ladder to do that, right? Basic, understand, a ladder makes accessible what is otherwise inaccessible. And Jacob here is being promised in verse 12 a ladder way taller than that, a ladder to heaven, a stairway to heaven, right? You don't have to be Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin to find this ladder. No, not at all. This picture of ascending and descending, these angels ascending and descending the ladder, is a picture of this regular coming down and going up. And here's the idea. God is standing at the top of the ladder in heaven. But Jacob, I'm also right there on the earth with you, next to you. I'm right there. What does he say? Behold, I am with you. This is heaven reaching down to this earth. And so Jacob says in verse 16, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid. He goes, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. But now if you go back to John chapter 1 and verse 51 and just compare those two passages, what's going on? What's different? Well, there's not a ladder, but there's something instead of the ladder. Who is it? It's the King of heaven. It's the King of heaven. Right? The angels are ascending and descending on Jesus. And so Jesus is saying that Jacob was right in saying that is none other than the gate of heaven. Heaven is opened, but in place of the ladder is him. The angels ascending and descending represent life of heaven, the promises of heaven, all the blessings of our future certainty in heaven. The knowledge of God and the experience of knowing God now is accessible through Jesus. He's the ladder. He's the stairway, right? He took the stairway from heaven to earth in order to be that lamb so that the gates would open wide and you could know God now. And look at this incredible thing that's going on here. Because do you remember what happened right before this great revelation where he goes, it's going to get better. You think this is great? What was the thing he was comparing it to? This is like one of my favorite parts of this whole gospel. He says to him, behold, an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. You could literally translate that, behold, an Israelite indeed in whom there is no Jacob. Because Jacob was known as a deceiver. So he's saying, you're the true Jacob. Right? You're the real deal. And so Nathanael said, how do you know me? And Jesus says, well, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. And Nathanael answered, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. I mean, on the surface, that kind of seems a little bit like, calm down, buddy, right? Don't you think? He says, I saw you under the fig tree, and he goes, you are the King of Israel? I mean, if you and I had never met and someone introduced us today, and I was like, oh man, no, I think I've seen you before. I saw you downtown at Martha Green's, right? I think we've met, or I've seen you at least from a distance. Are you tempted to think, whoa, are you the King of Israel? I mean, would you be tempted if I had seen you somewhere? No, not at all, right? I mean, you might think I have a good memory. You might think I'm a bit creepy. I don't really know what you're going to think. But I doubt you're going to respond with the way Nathanael responded to Jesus. Sitting under a fig tree would be quite normal. So the only reason Nathanael would respond that way is if something was happening under that fig tree that was so personal, that was so private, that for Nathanael, no one knew about. And Jesus knowing about it indicated to him, you know me. Sitting there under that tree, I don't know what it was. Some sort of disappointment, some dark chamber of shame. Tim Keller said, whatever was happening under that fig tree was so unique and so private that Jesus knowing it in itself was proof to Nathanael that Jesus was the one. He's just like Jacob, alone, wrestling. And so our passage today, it starts with Jesus saying to a couple of would-be followers of Jesus, you're seeking me, right? Well, what are you really after? And it ends with Jesus revealing to a man named Nathanael that he knows everything. So he already knows why you're seeking him. But he also is reminding Nathanael, even in those moments, I never turned my face away from you. This is Jesus' answer to our question, right? What are you searching for? You're searching for a God who knows your deepest pain. You're searching for a God who knows your darkest shame. You're searching a God who knows your disappointments, who knows your crushed dreams. He knows the whole mixed bag of who you are. And he loves you anyway. You want to know how I know he loves you? Because he came from heaven to this earth to die in your place. Greater love is no one than this, than he would lay down his life for you. Jesus saying, what you're looking for in this world, you can keep looking around, but what you're looking for is me. I know your hopes, I know your heart, and I'm the one you're looking for. And so Nathanael, if you think that's cool, just wait. Following me is not boring. It's not boring. We don't live our Christian lives, you guys, just wanting, if you're anything like me, I look in the past to times that were really sweet. Oh man, that was great. Oh, I was really growing. I was really doing this. And we tend to do that. And Jesus constantly presses us forward. You thought that was great? Oh, I've got more. You want to go back to that time when you were feeling that way, when you were experiencing that? I've got more. Just keep your eyes on me. I love how John ends his book. If you want to know my favorite verse in all the Bible, I feel very confident in telling you it's John 21:25. Jesus says, or John says there, now there are also many other things that Jesus did. Were every one of them to be written, I suppose that the world itself could not contain the books that would be written. You think Jesus is great this morning? The world is not a large enough library to tell you how great he is. There's always more with Jesus. There's always more with Jesus.